Like the whole selling point of VPN providers is that you can trust them. So if there is a VPN provider that you cannot trust, you'll know about it. Like they have all the economical incentive to actually be trustworthy.
Okay.
Does that mean they're all trustworthy? No, of course not. So I'm not an expert regarding what VPN providers are trustworthy or not. I think
Mm-hmm.
what you should look into, however, is how aggressive their marketing strategies are, because the more aggressive ones will tend to be the ones that are more interested in making a quick buck, so more likely maybe to sell your data. And also look
Yeah.
at the ones that have had potential security breach. So for breaches. So for instance, do you know one VPN provider that recently, maybe it was like months ago, but that a commercial VPN provider that had a security breach? So what happened at NordVPN is that some of their user passwords and logs and stuff like that have been stolen, so personal data, but especially user credentials, which is a big deal. So if you're looking to use a VPN, well, I would not recommend a VPN that has shown to have security breaches. Now, you also have to remember that just because a VPN has had a leak does not mean it's a bad VPN. It's a bad omen, but it's not strict in the sense that a VPN, because it's going to be a central hub for personal data, it's going to be heavily targeted. And it's extremely hard to keep something this highly targeted secure. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
making excuses for the fact that they didn't protect the data sufficiently, but I am trying to explain that this is essentially an impossible endeavor. Anyone with enough resources can hack anything, like we explained
Yeah.
last time, right? Um,
Right.
but if I was to trust something, obviously I wouldn't trust a company with it. I would hesitate to trust a company with as far as I'm concerned, they sort of accumulate two bad traits that I don't like in VPNs. First one, very aggressive marketing, going as far as, sponsoring a lot of content creators and whatnot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it shows that obviously a
That's
company
good.
has to make money, but they care about the money first, is what it sort of shows.
Yeah.
Um, which, in all fairness, most VPN providers do work like that as well, but still. Uh, there's that, and on the other hand, there's the fact that they've been hacked, and maybe you don't want to trust people who have been hacked with your privacy. Um,
Yeah, I prefer not to.
right. Personally, one that I have been using but is not perfect, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everyone, is Proton VPN. The reason I like them is because, as far as I know, I've never seen like any aggressive marketing campaign for what they do. They're also the team that developed Proton Mail, which is an encrypted email service. So personally, I hate Gmail because Google does not even try to hide the fact that they actually read your emails, and they read your emails and you know it, because now there's an AI that automatically suggests you replies, right? When you're writing a reply to an email in Gmail, in your Gmail inbox,
Hmm.
there is an AI that's going to automatically suggest, oh, maybe you want to reply that. So
Yeah,
that means the AI has read your email. So that means
yeah,
Google knows what your email contains, right?
yeah.
So maybe you don't want to trust Google with that sort of thing and go with Proton Mail. Proton Mail is also free, by the way, so I heavily recommend it. Like a Proton Mail, I can safely sit behind. This is a good service, especially because it's free. Proton VPN is a little different, and I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend it, especially if what you want to do is peer-to-peer transfer, so BitTorrenting. So the relationship between BitTorrenting and VPN is kind of weird, because BitTorrenting being a peer-to-peer service, like, okay, doing VPNs when all that you do is just send a request, so a one-way request, that's fairly easy. It doesn't take it's not very hard. But doing the same thing, doing a VPN service for peer-to-peer transfer, now that's a lot more difficult from a technical standpoint. And so things
Okay.
like torrenting, in my experience, don't work with Proton VPN. Now, Proton VPN, so just to clarify, if you guys are planning to use Proton VPN, they do claim they support peer-to-peer. The reality is that So I'm not super proficient in BitTorrenting, but from what I understand, they can modify some of the I believe it is priority is what is the field they touch. So they can change the priority that you set to your for your torrent, essentially making it so that you can't, from what I believe, so I might be wrong on that. I believe they make it so that you can't actually upload anything, which in terms makes it so that no one actually wants to transfer you anything, because from the get-go, the Proton VPN is going to say for you, we're not going to upload anything. And so why would anyone transfer to you a file if you're not willing to transfer it back to the community?
Oh yeah.
So in my experience, I have never been able to get any torrenting, legal torrenting, obviously, right? Just vacation pictures and whatnot. So I've never been able to get any torrent working on Proton using the Proton VPN peer-to-peer network. That might be some of my settings, possible. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but from what I've read, it's not feasible with Proton VPN specifically. So this is why I'm saying I like Proton VPN as a service, but if your plan is to do BitTorrenting, like peer-to-peer transfers, maybe you should look into something else.
Okay.
All right. Another really cool thing about VPNs is the encryption part. And I love this part because it's so silly. So the fact that it is encrypted, and we'll sort of get back on this when we talk about, the relationship between VPN and your ISP. We'll get into that later, because the encryption part here actually is more important to your to hide your data from your ISP than anything. But for now, let's just say one thing I find kind of funny about that encryption thing is, and I don't remember what VPN provider was the one advertising their stuff like that, but they, on their website, they claim to have military grade encryption. Oh, what was that?
Jeez.
Oh, hold on. There we go. I was completely lost. Military grade encryption.
Wow.
Encryption.
That would be very good.
And it's technically true. That's the crazy part. It's technically true, and it's also ridiculously stupid. Hold on. If I want to download, okay, I'm not saying this out loud. Of course I should share my, yeah, exactly. So if you're downloading anything using, BitTorrent and anything legal, obviously, your duty would be to share back, and you wouldn't be able to do that with certain VPN providers. Okay, so back to encryption. So military grade encryption, and that's actually true, and it's also stupid. So what they mean when they say military grade encryption. So as far as encryption standards go, you have legacy standards, which are so I'm talking here about the encryption algorithms. So this is not networking. This is closer to programming, like actual programming.
Okay.
So you have DES, which is a proprietary, which was, I believe, a proprietary algorithm. Proprietary. You have 3DES, which is like an upgrade of DES. And then you have AES. So there is a whole story behind the AES where essentially it was a contest to like get the best open source encryption algorithm. And AES won. Okay. AES is actually open source. And so the crazy thing about AES is that it is, so first of all, let me ask you a question. So if you had to choose, so assuming that both DES and AES are suitable for now, at least, are assuming they're both suitable encryption algorithms, would you rather use an encryption algorithm that relies on the fact that it is secret for its encryption, meaning if it's not secret anymore, then it's not useful? Or would you rely on an encryption algorithm that everyone is aware of, that everyone knows how it works, and despite that, they still cannot crack it. Which one, in your eyes, is more secure? Or is more reliable long term, rather?
AES, I guess.
Yeah. The fact
Because
that this is the craziest part. AES, despite the so DES is weak because eventually people end up figuring out the algorithm, and once they do, the algorithm is weak. That algorithm
yeah,
relied on the fact that it was secret, but a secret never lasts. Whereas
it's
AES is so good that even if you know how it works, you're nowhere near being able to crack it.
damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I can
And
see
if
why AES is so powerful now.
Yeah. So AES is actually the encryption standard, the symmetric encryption algorithm that's used everywhere. There's a reason I
Okay.
specify symmetric, and this is sort of we'll get back into symmetric versus asymmetric encryption when we do the HTTPS class. So if you're interested in that,
Mhm.
but for now, yeah, encryption is the algorithm that's essentially used everywhere. There are multiple implementations of AES, but we're not really interested in that. At least not today.
Okay.
Okay. And so when they see military grade, it's technically true. And the story is that so there it's the Ministry of Defense. So I don't know if it's the American one or maybe the French one or maybe both. But the fact of the matter is, there are some ministries of defenses that were like using their own encryption standard originally, right? Like they developed their own encryption algorithm that were secret, and they were using that to communicate with each other, like within the Ministry of Defense. And then they realized that AES is in fact so good that they would be better off using AES.
Yeah.
So everyone uses AES, including the Ministry of Defense, including, military grade professionals.
So that's how reliable it is.
Exactly. It's but this is why I love that branding of military grade encryption, because it's technically true, but at the same time it's a silly thing to say, because I could very well say that it is free encryption. You're thinking, wait, free encryption? Free doesn't seem very secure. Actually, it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so essentially, I just sort of chuckled at the branding of it, like military grade encryption. It's true, but it's kind of silly. It's like saying that the oxygen I offer you is military grade because it so happens that military people breathe the same air. It's like,
Oh,
okay, I
man.
guess, right? So it's just branding, but it's kind of funny.
It is.
Um. Anyway, so how do you feel so far? How's it going? Do you need a break, maybe?
No, I'm good.
Okay, let's keep going. So, what was on our to-do list? No VPN for Google. We've done that. With VPN from Google's perspective, I believe we've done that as well.
Yeah, since it is getting the VPN's public IP address on our own. And
Right.
how
Yeah. Exactly. Um. Let me see. So the cool thing about this, and after that, I think we'll take a short break. The
okay.
cool thing about this, like the case where you're trying to hide from Google,
Mm-hmm.
this would work even with a non-commercial VPN, with what I call
Oh,
a private VPN or like self-hosted VPN.
yeah.
Because see, the whole thing here relies on the fact that this is not coming from you directly,
Yeah.
right? But if there it doesn't make a difference if there's one person using the VPN or 10,000. In the case specifically from the point of view of Google.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
whether there's one person or 10,000 using that VPN, Google has no way of knowing your source IP address.
No.
Right. So one thing that you can do is, so this would work with obviously any free VPN, any commercial VPN, but it would also work with a self-hosted VPN. And by self-hosted, I don't mean a VPN that's running next to a computer and using the same public IP address. That actually defeats the purpose. You want to hide your IP address. What you
Well,
can do
yeah.
instead is you can so if you want to do self-hosted, and this is sort of what we're going to be doing today in the lab.
Yeah.
Do you know what a VPS is?
I have never heard of VPS.
Okay, so can you guess what VNP stand for?
VNP,
Yeah, it's the same as VPN.
Virtual Network
Virtual
Privacy.
private. Okay, virtual private what? Virtual private server. So it's just a very fancy term for a virtual machine on the cloud. On
Okay.
the cloud. So you have services like I think the best, the cheap, a decent, cheap, consumer grade VPS service is Linode.
Okay.
And what you can do, for instance, is set up a Linux VM. So as far as you're concerned, it doesn't matter whether it's a VM or not. It just happens to be a VM. But you can buy a Linux VM, install a VPN server on it, a VPN server app, and then you just set up your own connection to your own VPN.
Okay.
And that would, it's what Google would see is that those requests are sent from Linode,
Yeah.
but they don't know who is using that VPS, right? They aren't Linode. As far as I know, I actually don't know. There's a possibility that maybe Linode would be fishy and trade your info with Google. I don't know that. Okay. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because when I'll be talking about, and this is a bit of a spoiler for later, when I'll be talking about ISPs, self-hosted VPNs don't help.
Okay.
So self-hosted gets a green check mark. It works.